Men, the Me Too movement, and the media. Is it getting better for women or worse? Today on Carpe Diem. Hello and welcome to Carpe Diem. I'm Mark Effron. I'm a professor of journalism here at the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State. Today we grapple with an issue that's as current as the latest headlines. Matt Lauer, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, those names and so many more have shown a needed spotlight on how women who work in the media are treated. Sexual harassment, equal pay and opportunity. It's a story that's been around since the turn of the 20th century when women started entering the workforce in larger numbers. But while so much has changed, equal pay for equal work is still elusive. Take a look.
The Me Too movement has propelled a wave for women's empowerment, not only in the entertainment industry, but across all platforms. Women have been fighting for the rights to equal pay and treatment in the workplace for decades. But since more incidents have been rising, it has exploded. Many have shared their stories of unfair treatment, sexual harassment, wage gaps between them and male counterparts, and much more. Actress Emma Watson shared, "I have experienced sexism in that I have been directed by male directors 17 times and only twice by women." Actress Meryl Streep stated, "No one has ever said to an actor, 'You're playing a strong-minded man.' We assume that men are strong-minded or have opinions, but a strong-minded woman is a different animal." There are power in numbers, and people have come together to create a conversation that has been a long time coming. April 10th was a symbolic day where celebrities used social media to advocate for Equal Pay Day. Actress Emmy Rossum tweeted, "It's Equal Pay Day. Let's lift each other up and promote a fair and equitable workplace." While comedian Ellen DeGeneres tweeted, "What do we want? Equal pay. When did we want it? 100 years ago." Even male producer Nev Schulman wrote, "Pay women more. They're amazing. That's all." Both women and men are realizing there's still inequality within the workforce, and they are fighting for the equal opportunity. Celebrities on the red carpet of the Golden Globes showed their support by wearing Time's Up pins, dedicated to confronting abuse of power as well as promoting gender equality. Many powerful and well-known actresses, writers, directors, and producers have come together to create this movement. And it's not just in Hollywood. Here at Montclair State University, students we spoke to have concerns about their futures in the media.
I definitely would say that I am worried to experience gender inequality in the workplace and even in the media moving forward in my life. As a woman, I have had personal fears and experiences with that.
If a woman can do the same job that a man can, and sometimes even better than a man can, I think she either should be deserved to pay as equal as him or even more as him, more than him, because she can do the job better than he can.
In addition, several celebrities like Reese Witherspoon and Queen Latifah have started their own production companies focused on hiring and employing women. Montclair State student Nicole Mikic works for a female-based company.
With the internship that I did get through Montclair, it was actually, the company that it was actually kind of centered towards women. So there I didn't experience really any gender inequality because it was the things that I was writing about and the things that I was talking about were kind of centered around women, honestly, a lot of the times even women in the workplace. So that was actually a great experience as a woman going into this, this area of work, because honestly, I wasn't even working with any men. It was all women, which was pretty awesome.
I believe in women leadership and women empowerment 100%, regardless of the industry. Females, are definitely a really, really valuable part of any industry and part of any workplace or any society.
Thankfully, I haven't experienced gender inequality in the things that I've been involved in on campus, and I think that stems from the fact that our generation is so well informed about this issue because it's something we're so passionate about changing.
I'm hoping to see more leaps and bounds in the future, and women really take a stance and take a role, leading roles in not just the media industry, but across all platforms. But I think the media industry has definitely, compared to a business industry or marketing industry, I think we've come farther.
There's a lot to unpack there. Joining us now are two guests who are going to help us unpack. They both know the media scene, one as a public radio journalist, the other as both an author and an expert on gender and pay. First, Jaime Bedrin, a professor in the School of Communication and Media and a veteran of public radio, which has had more than its share of Me Too scandals. And second, Yasemin Besen-Cassino, a professor of sociology here at Montclair State and author of, among other things, The Cost of Being a Girl, Working Teens and the Origins of the Gender Wage Gap. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
So Jaime, I want to start with you. You have spent many years in public media, public radio. How much of that video rings true to you?
Yeah, it's so interesting to watch that video. I was sitting here thinking, are we still dealing with this today? Are we still debating this? Don't we know that women are capable? It's so interesting. I have been very fortunate in my experiences, but there's little things along the way that have been difficult for me. When I first started working at a public radio station in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was really a wonderful experience for me. I was just out of journalism school and I was 25, and I had a wonderful opportunity to be a reporter and a host. I spent 5 years there. One thing that became clear, though, was I probably wasn't going to be able to get married and have a child at that job because they didn't have a proper, maternity type of package. And I wasn't planning on that immediately, but I remember thinking, this is interesting. How would I navigate that? But then moving back to New York and doing some freelance for WNYC and working at ABC News and teaching at Columbia and here. I've heard plenty of stories of people that have struggled in different ways, but I think the biggest glaring example is what we've seen most recently at WNYC and the unfortunate lack of regard for what several employees reported. It just seems like their voices were not heard, and that's a continuing problem, both in public media and in the private sector as well.
So Yasemin, what Jaime was just talking about, this lack of voice that women continue to feel in these media positions, even in the wake of all of these horrible scandals. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you've seen in your research through other fields?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about women in the media, it's about women everywhere. They report that they're getting underpaid and face sexual harassment and nothing gets done.
Why is that? Why is it at a time, it's 2018, we have women CEOs, women have traditionally been in the top HR positions in all companies, certainly media companies, mm-hmm. Certainly in all the media companies I worked for, it was almost always a woman running HR.
We almost had a female president.
We almost had
almost.
So why hasn't it, why are we still here in 2018 dealing with almost every day these awful headlines about organizations that say, well, we didn't know about that. We're going to look into it. We're either going to have an outside investigation or an inside investigation. It's like a script that we're following. But why did it take so long?
Well, first of all, we didn't think this was a problem all along. We had to convince people that the gender is a problem. And all of a sudden, now we acknowledge that all along, we haven't solved the gender problem.
Just like we haven't solved the race problem. It's
Absolutely.
Very similar.
And it's not about, male or female executives. We are gendered in the same way, and we just don't talk about money. And in the past couple of years, I think we shifted the burden.
Who doesn't talk about money?
None of us do.
None of us.
And especially men and women. I think men are more likely, but we raise women not to talk about money, and we have a culture of not making salaries public. So most of the time, women don't even know that they've been discriminated against until it's too late.
So as an expert in gender and pay, do you think that this current wave of Me Too is going to change things so that in 5 years from now, when you work on your next book and you look back at 2018 through 2023, you're going to see a statistical change in society, in salaries, in how we handle sexual harassment, all those things?
I hope so. I think this is the first step, but I think the trap we can fall into is thinking this is it, right? The movement has been great to shed light onto the problem, but we haven't fixed the problem yet. So it's up to us to put the mechanisms in and change the management.
So I want to go, Jaime, something that Yasemin said in terms of none of us are good at talking about salaries, although I would say that men are probably more willing to push and fight and be vocal about it than women, in my experience.
And men's networks are more useful. They talk to each other about money, they tip each other off, whereas women don't.
Yeah, so in your experience, when you've had to go in there and ask for a raise, or it came time for your review, as a younger woman starting out in the business.
I remember so clearly.
Talk to us about that experience.
Okay.
What was it like? Because my experience is on the other side as the person doing the negotiating on behalf of the company. So talk to us about that.
Well, at that same job at WFAE, 90.7, your NPR news source.
In
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Really, we had a wonderful experience. I don't remember if it was after my first or second year, but and I remember what I was offered initially. I think I was making something like $32,000, and this would have been in it was 2001, because I started a week before.
And that
9/11.
wasn't horrible for a radio job in 2001, was it?
No, I mean, obviously the cost of living in North Carolina is different than up here. Charlotte is not cheap, but if you grew up in the Northeast, it's much more affordable, rent, et cetera. So after my first or second year, I think I applied for a raise, and I remember writing a letter, and I had a wonderful news director, and he sort of guided me a little bit. I think I asked for a 10% raise. I ended up getting 6%. But I do remember that so clearly because it was definitely a process, and I was young and trying to figure it out.
How did you try to figure it out? Did you talk to coworkers? Did you get a sense that guys were making more than some of the women in similar pay, or you weren't comfortable doing that?
Well, nobody was making a lot of money, so I don't think there was like a huge discrepancy.
Yeah.
And I had a unique situation because I worked with two people that were married to each other, my other two news colleagues. So, but I don't think I was comparing myself at that point to other people, and I definitely was a junior staffer, but I definitely made a push for some sort of raise as I became more experienced and took on more responsibilities at the station. Meaning as I started hosting All Things Considered in the afternoon, even as a fill-in, and as I became more confident. And it was important. What I don't remember is after that first raise, if I then, let's say 2 years later, applied for another raise. You know what I'm saying? That I can't remember.
So Yasemin, let's go back to, I guess it was 2017 when the New Yorker and the New York Times first exposed Harvey Weinstein, and that opened up the floodgates. As somebody who studies the issue, were you thinking this is going to come and go? I mean, take us through the last year of the Me Too movement.
It was exciting to see all these men being exposed. I mean, the one thing that struck me is it was never men at the top of their game. They were men in decline, men like not making as much money anymore and not very profitable.
Matt Lauer was at the top of his game.
He was kind of on the decline. Or like Harvey Weinstein, his movies are not making so much money anymore. And the first thing in my head was, when is their comeback? They're going to take a couple of months, and then we're going to feel sorry for them, and they're going to have a comeback.
And
and it's been a couple of months, and now we see,
Charlie Rose,
Charlie
you
Rose,
want to tell us
or
about that?
Louis C.K., and they're going to have like a new tour, and should we forgive them?
Well, Charlie Rose, it was announced last week, is trying to put a show together where he interviews other men who were outed as sexual harassers. And
Now we see the backlash of let's feel sorry for these men, which is what I was afraid of in the first place. I mean, the movement is great. Let's make this a problem. Let's change the law. Let's change the culture. But instead, I think we're seeing more backlash.
So let me ask you another question. This is something I discuss all the time with both my colleagues from the world of journalism and also with my wife, who's a clinical social worker, which is, are there gradations? So in other words, do you talk about the Bill Cosbys and the Harvey Weinsteins the same way you talk about others who were offenders but didn't drug and allegedly rape? In other words, how do we have a discussion going forward that points to people who did wrong, but then there are levels of wrongness?
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we do that?
This is a new phenomenon, and I think we need new vocabulary for that. And we're at the start of that debate.
Help us with the vocabulary.
We don't have it yet, and I think we're at the start of it.
Jamie.
I disagree just a little bit that I don't think it's really a new phenomenon, or maybe the talking about it is what's new.
Talking about it is absolutely.
I mean, this has been going on, forever.
For ages.
It's a great question, Mark, and I think we need to really think about that. I mean, Bill Cosby was just found guilty, and these are women who brought. Some of them may bring civil cases against him, but what he did was criminal. It's criminal activity.
Right.
I'm not an attorney. I don't know all the lingo, but and then you have people that what we maybe used to say was they're misbehaving. I have a friend who told me a story of a professor who kind of courted her, and my girlfriend told me this story, and she just refused to believe that what he was doing was wrong. And a bunch of us were listening to her, and we said, do you not see how he treated you was absolutely inappropriate? And it's just fascinating. Even I mentioned, the other day about Stormy Daniels, her saying, well, I don't really know if what he did was actually wrong or harassment, not wanting to be the victim. That's a whole nother part of it.
Well, she staked herself out as somebody who was equal to Donald Trump in terms of using and manipulating the media.
Now she's suing, right, for defamation.
For defamation.
But you really ask a great question. Some things are illegal, some things aren't, some things are criminal, and where do we, how do we navigate that?
And how do we navigate when something comes out, as we tape this show, about Tom Brokaw, who allegedly did inappropriate things back in the 90s. I remember back in the 90s, and I remember being a media executive and having a boss who was having a relationship with a colleague of mine. And it was obviously a power disparity, but everybody knew about it. And there was no, it was almost like an open secret in the company I was working for. So how do we take stuff that happened 20, 30 years ago, and what do we apply? How do we handle it today in 2018, where our standards are, thank God, so much different?
Well, we start that by starting the conversation, because for a long time, we didn't think this was a problem. We didn't acknowledge it. And finally, we're starting to think, this is an issue. And we can be more open about this, just like we're open about, we can be open about salaries and make things public.
And, a good friend of mine is also a therapist and she's a sex therapist, okay? She and I had a whole conversation, and we actually were on WMSC talking about this, about consent issues. She sincerely believes that we ought to be talking about consent at a much younger age. And it doesn't mean that we overwhelm a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, but her point is really an excellent one, that the truth is we never teach it.
Right.
And if we started
5 or 6 may be too young, though, no?
Well, she doesn't think so.
Start the
conversation
Okay.
in that, you have 2 little kids. I mean, I have a almost 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Lily doesn't want you to push her.
Got it.
That kind of thing.
I understand.
And, I think it's very interesting. And honestly, as the mother of 2 boys, it's something that I do think about and struggle with. What is the appropriate language? Because I don't want to, criminalize them. I don't want to make them feel badly about themselves. But I would like to learn a better way to educate them and teach them. And that's what my friend is saying. We ought to start teaching consent at a much younger age.
So, Yasemin, you went on a book tour earlier this year.
Earlier this year?
This year. Did you brush up against any examples, overt or covert, of media sexism or harassment, or did you see people who were treated differently because of their gender?
Well, most of the time I've been lucky because it's a book about gender and it's a selection effect.
So they're going to
right?
be on their best behavior.
Exactly, but it's
How
also, people and publicists who work with like gender books it's a different crowd who are into gender, have a gender training, but I've had very positive experiences, but I've also had negative experiences, especially, I had a reporter, the minute he heard my voice, we had a phone call, he was disappointed I was a woman. He thought, Dr. Cassino would be a man.
How could you tell he was disappointed?
He actually said my name over and over, and I don't know if it's my, foreign sounding name or if it's,
Well,
if
I mean,
it's
I
the
asked
gender
you to
part.
repeat it because I didn't want to get your name wrong, but I knew you were a woman.
But he was very upset that he even refused to ask me the questions because, are you even an expert, he asked me.
No.
It's like,
Really?
And he was genuinely disappointed that, a woman expert in pay gap, how could that happen?
Really?
But that was only one experience.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to that, I've had very pleasant experiences with many good reporters.
So the name of one of your books is The Cost of Being a Girl. In 2018, Jaime was talking about, teaching children consent. And obviously, there was a certain amount of, you're taking that on more than one level. When you're talking about the cost of being a girl, you're talking about what they're being paid. But what is the cost of being a girl or a young woman today in terms of beyond consent? What else do we as parents need to do better to get them ready, whether it's media or not, in terms of the world they're going to be going into?
Well, we can teach them about the problems of the workforce. I mean, one of the things we've done in the past couple of decades is shift the problem onto the young women themselves. We told them to negotiate and know their self-worth, and now we just made them feel bad about themselves. We don't equip them with the information.
But what information don't we equip them with?
Pay information. Going into a job, most young women don't know how much a job pays for or what the job description is. Most of the time for the exact same job, they might be paid the same, but their job description is different. Women just do more. So they should be aware of that. And it's not just about negotiating, right? Women do negotiate, but what happens when they do negotiate?
So here's the other side of women just doing more. As somebody who's hired hundreds, if not thousands of people, I can tell you, and this is going to sound very general, women employees are generally better than guys. I can tell you that, and again, I'm being very general, come in earlier, stay later, do more responsible, less prone to be screw-ups. So, that's good.
There's a stereotype threat, right?
That's a stereotype. I've just given you a positive stereotype based on my experience as somebody who's hired hundreds, if not thousands of people. So in some ways, are you saying that's bad?
Well, no, but it's the stereotype threat for the women. Women
Right.
do more work because they feel like if they screw up, it's not the individual screwing up. They're doing it for all women.
Yeah.
It's going to be reflected badly on all women.
And bosses like me take advantage of that because we have higher expectations.
Well, of course, but they also expect social stuff.
Yeah.
Women in the office are the ones who buy birthday cards and,
I
get the
never asked a
birthday
woman
cake.
to buy a birthday card or a cake. Yeah, you were saying, Jaime.
I know, I was going to say that I think you asked a good question. What can we do? What do we need to do? And one thing is actually, take the onus off of the young women, as you said, and make this something that everybody is paying attention to and everyone is aware of, and taking information that may have been locked up or private and making people more aware of what their colleagues are earning. Women have a tendency, Sheryl Sandberg has written a lot about this, to not speak up, or they will sit further away at a conference table. There are these little things that we sort of need to work on and shift. But I also think, big picture, we need to look at the whole sort of package. What can we do to make the workplace more female and family friendly? And that will help solve some of the issues. I mean, she said when she was pregnant with maybe her first child, she was very sick, and she convinced, I guess it was Google, to put in some pregnancy parking spots or
Right.
something. And the guys did it. They listened to her. because she was at a level where she could have that conversation. But like, let's be honest. I mean, so many people don't have the resources to do, things like that. And that's part of the issue. We can talk about the celebrity movement and Time's Up, but what we really need to talk about is all the women who are cleaning homes or working in a hotel,
Right.
and teachers.
So speaking of education, do you see this amongst your present students? What are you seeing in terms of them preparing themselves, or you preparing them for what they're going to find in the workplace?
Oh, I see awareness. For the first time, I see many students are aware of the problems of the workforce. They know about the pay gap, they know about gender issues, and they're ready to negotiate.
Do they ever say to you, well, professor, what if I face this? Or what if I have a male supervisor who does that? Does it ever get that kind of specific? And if it does, what do you tell them?
Well, I just give them the newest research on this so they know about the problems, they know how to negotiate, but I also want to prepare them for what happens when they do negotiate. And it's not just about preparing the students, but I think preparing the HR is just as important.
What about you, Jaime, here in the School of Communication and Media?
It's interesting. I recently had a situation with a student who needed guidance on something, and I was happy to try and help the best that I can. We probably could be doing a better job of helping students in negotiating salary and how to talk to future bosses and let them know that we are available to help them. I think that students, it's not unusual that they need help. They're young, and we all need guidance. I haven't had that many students come to me and say, I need help getting a salary raise, but I've heard students say, I'm ready to make the next step in my job. How do I do that?
Well, I also tell them that they have each other.
That's a very good point. And on that note, we're going to end. Thank you both for joining us. We could have talked about this for another 2 hours. Thank you for tuning in. If you would like more information about this or any other edition of Carpe Diem, you can write to us at the email address right on your screen, carpediem.mail.montclair.edu, or call us at 973-655-5158. For all of us at Carpe Diem, keep fighting for your rights. I'm Mark Effron.